Hey, my sweet friend, and I am Uber. Uber, Uber, Uber. I love hearing that word Uber. Not only do I love it because Uber's such a safe way to get home, but I just think it just shows a little bit of umph, a little bit of enthusiasm behind this subject because it's near and dear to my heart, and it's going to be near and dear to your heart because it's not talked about enough. It's not talked about how we can start to really foster and create a really amazing bond with our inner child. And you may be like, I don't feel like talking about this today. I promise you, you will see a lot of light at the end of this. It's not always, Kim's talking about the hard stuff again. And it's like, darn you, Kim. I get that a lot. I get that a ton. But what I love about it is that I get you to feel. I get you to feel those valid feels. And, that's something I take a lot of pride in because there's a lot of justification going on. And so what I mean by that is that we justify that our feelings shouldn't be happening, or our feelings are less than of someone else that we know has gone through turmoil. And we live in a world that it has a lot of catastrophic events. And we live in a world that we are in war. So yeah, when we really break it down, we probably have it really freaking amazing. If you're taking the time right now, you have it pretty amazing. And I'm not saying like, okay, get off here and never have a problem ever again in your life, because this is what's wrong with the justification. But what I am saying is that the justification is doing a disservice to you because it's still coming up, meaning those hard times, those lessons, those things that are holding you back. And I have so many things that have held me back and continue to hold me back because I justify and I go to perspective. And so I want you to be in this mindset of just be able to release. And I also want to commend you here. If you are under the impression that you don't have time to be your best self, I'm commending you right now because you're doing it. If you're listening to the first minute and 30 seconds to this, you're pretty amazing. And I'm not just blowing some smoke up your bootay. I'm being real because I was in a place one time, about 24, and I share this story a lot in here. So if you heard my story, but about 24, I was in a place where I didn't have room for growth. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't mean that I wasn't capable of growing. It doesn't mean that it wasn't a need for me to grow, but my mental capacity wasn't letting me have any room. So if someone came to me and was like, hey, let's start this at-home business and you become this entrepreneur right now, I'd be like, hold up, sister, this shiznaz is not happening. Um, and it's just not because I wasn't in a mental space. So if you are beating yourself over the head for not having, progressed in your life, know that you're just creating the space. And this podcast is really designed to create that space for you. So for example, if you are in poverty and you are in hardships in your relationship and you are barely making ends meet, you're kind of giving me the middle finger right now. Kim, I don't have time to think about my feelings like this. And I get it. I get it because when you get to a point of that scarcity mindset, there isn't any room. But I will say this is that there is light on the other end. So if you are strong enough, which you are, but if you happen to get yourself around other people that have been in harder hardships, AKA that's perspective, that have gone through and come out, you're going to get more room. And that room is needed. And I don't say that lightly. It's needed, or I hate to say it, but I will say it. You will always stay stuck. You will always have those same lessons come up. You will always say, why me? It's always something. Versus, hey, life will go on. I'm going to release it. I'm going to realize that this is something that I can take some responsibility for, aka all of it, because it's your life, no one else. And then you can see how you can move forward. And this is a big thing that I teach within a lot of my programs, specifically the Breakthrough Blueprint, where I have them go through these progressions: awareness, clarity, presence, and then forward thinking to thrive in their lives. But what I started to see as I'm in week 3 of one of my courses is that, why aren't everyone thinking like this? And then I had to go back into my time machine and say, Kim at 24, Kim at 18 even, but I really cognitively know it Kim at 24, because that's when I started to make the shift. Kim at 24 had no capacity. All she needed was relief, and she didn't know how to get it. And so she got it in therapy. She got it with drinking. She got it with yelling. And so for her to think that she had room to go create some freedoms in their life, dream bigger, love life, be the fullest, you're crazy. I was. I needed that time to be able to say now, 7 years later, and whenever you're listening to this, that I needed that time. But what's really, really amazing is that through my programs, through the Fitness Breakthrough Blueprint that I'm about to launch next month, I'm super excited, because what I'm learning is that in these programs, you need to go through a progression, because you're probably drained right now. And I'll get to this inner child stuff in a second. But you're probably drained right now. You're probably just depleted. So you need to really focus just on your vitality, your well-being. And that right there is vital, because you're not able to create some room and to be able to progress. I'm going to say that again. You're not able to create some room to be able to progress if you don't have that energy and that vitality and that understanding that this thing called health and fitness is not a fad. And how can we make it to our benefit instead of our disservice? So I'm going to share with you that justification and that release that we need and that perspective. So it goes like this: justify, perspective, and then release. And why I have it in that order, and it's all messed up, it does not need to be in that order. But the justification is really where we're always at. Justification and then perspective. We justify that we can't get a workout in. We justify that we're not in a certain place in our life. We justify that we're not making enough money because of the people in our life. Or that inner child that needs attention. So the inner child is that little girl in you, that little boy in you that we think potentially could sound like kooky. I always talk about this, and people, like, their eyes just go wide open. They're either amazed and feel relieved, or they're like, yeah, okay, Kim. Well, guess what? We are functioning out of that child. We're functioning from those fears that we were established as a child. And I'm not saying you got to have this like totally traumatic, terrible upbringing to have these inner child things. It could be someone just said, your ears are really big, and then that's stuck with you. And then what happens as an adult is when anyone kind of does anything with your self-image, you're like, damn it. But because we go to that justification so quickly, that's so stupid to be sad about. But yet you have self-image issues. But yet you have issues with making money because it was always frowned upon growing up. But yet you have relationship issues where you can't have a true connection and you've never actually loved in life. So I want you to take a step back and get out of that justification, aka our norm, and start to see how we can start to release. So what does that release look like? That release looks like that space that we've been talking about. This magical space, the space that are only for the of the world. No. And I say that with all seriousness and a little bit of humor to it. I always have a lot of humor, but a little bit of humor to it, because I thought I had to be this zen out person to be able to get to this space. And over time, meditation's become my friend. Over time, yoga has become my friend. And if you knew me back in the day, I was go, 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 give me 500 pounds to lift, drop that stuff on the ground, and make sure you pick it back up and do it again to numb. I didn't know that then, but I was numbing it. I was numbing it with bagels and pasta and a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of heavy lifting with that hand of drinking. I was numbing it. So I want you to get to that space. How can you get into that space of release? That space of release could be you zoning out. Not when you're driving. I've heard that a lot. People will meditate while they're driving and they zone out. And I'm like, I don't know if that's safe. But zoning out could be in nature. Zoning out can happen within a little nook in your house. Like, can you create that space for yourself? Zoning out could be through really light music. I wouldn't say heavy metal or rock or hip hop, even though I love to booty shake to it. Zoning out could be at the sunset or sunrise. And what that zone out will really do for you is it will give you a little piece of that space. Because that space is vital for you to be able to understand what that inner child needs from you. So we get so mad at ourselves, like, why am I not good enough? Why have I still not progressed in life? And you're just beating on ourselves, but then yet we don't know how to progress. Well, that beating down is you just pretty much fighting your inner child. You're fighting something that she or he just needs attention. So there's this thing called doll therapy, and I was reading about it in this book called Will I Ever Be Good Enough? And this doctor was talking about it, and it was interesting. I've done doll therapy to an extent, not this literal, but I have done it through therapy, and it's been hugely therapeutic. So if you aren't the therapy type, if you aren't the one to do things to heal yourself, you may want to turn me off right now. And I say that with all sincerity and respect. I am a believer of therapy. I am a believer of healing. I'm a believer that we do not need to stay stuck in our same thought process and same way of thinking. I believe this paradox that we have, aka what we've been downloading from the amount of years that we've been on this earth, from our parents, from our generations, can be shooken up. And I'm shaking it up over here, sister and brother, because it's vital to talk about this stuff. I was the most pessimistic person that you came across internally. I was the most pessimistic person when I was with my husband, then boyfriend. I would say my friends always thought I was really happy. Agreed. I was very good at that smile. I was very good at numbing it. So my friends are very surprised by this, and so I always apologize in advance for that. But my husband, the one where you feel the most comfortable with and you believe will never leave you, then boyfriend, knew the most. And I always reference that. Go buy him a drink when you see him and say, thanks for putting up with her, because I really appreciate what she's putting out there now. And he will honestly say, and not always divulge, I do enough of the divulging here, and will say, yeah, she was. But he knew. He knew it was pain. It wasn't me trying to be spiteful. It wasn't trying to be painful to him, even though it came off that way. So that inner child is someone that we don't need to fight. So I want you to get in a space today, tomorrow, the next weekend you have, and know that the space is there for you to breathe. It's there for you to let go of those beliefs that have been holding you in shackles. Will they go away forever? No. I can humbly say that. Will you get stronger at facing them? Yes. Yes. Those beliefs will come up when you do not want them to come up. They will come up when you want to present to your boss this great idea. They will come up to you when you're about to make that leap of faith to do those big dreams. They will come up when you want to say I love you to the person that may say I don't. But what will happen is the more times they come up and the more times that you prove yourself that you can go on the other side and you can see a positive and or a negative, and know that you still came out alive. Know that you have women like me that are supporting you. You have men in your corner. I'm actually going to let this one go. I got to leave you guys in a minute because it says meditate. I remind myself of these things. I remind myself of those self-limiting beliefs. I love that my alarm just went off in the sense that this thing is not perfect over here. Hence, balance over perfect. But that alarm said, go meditate, because I need to remind myself that I need this space. I am not exempt from this. I will never be exempt from this. I preach because I need to practice. I practice what I preach because I want this voice to be heard. Because once it wasn't. Once it was this screaming girl inside of me that was stomping her feet, just wanting someone to hug her. So the doll therapy I reference is very powerful. And what it does in simplest terms, and you can go Google it and do a little bit more of your research. That's another thing. Don't always depend on, your mentors and your bosses and your people in life to do this all for you. Go do your little bit of research. That's why I do so much personal and professional development. I do not rely on my mentors to be it. I just don't. And what's cool is that I'm able to teach my mentors now. I can teach them things about podcasts. I can teach them things about social media, and I'm like geeking out over it. But I went in and did a little bit more research on this doll therapy, through the book, Will I Ever Be Good Enough? And I was like, wow, I've done this before. I've done it with a pillow, in the sense that this pillow represented me, Lil Kim. Like add a little Lil Kim. It kind of sounds southern and not ghetto, or not gangster at all. I'm trying to be gangsta. But Little Kim, really, when I ask her, and when I look at this doll, so if you have this thing and you want to take it a little step further, if you're like, Kim, this is way too hooky for me, bear with me for just under a minute for sure, is that it's designed for you to have that conversation, to not separate you anymore. So separating, why am I feeling like this? It's like, no, why is she feeling like this? She is this person that still feels, that has still been hurt, that has still traveled in the many, many years and still have those underlining messages that come up for you. I'm not smart enough. I'll never be successful. I'll never be loved as much as I would like. So you have those conversations, you journal about those things and why it comes up, and how that release will come up is always going to be unique to you. And I remember the time that I did it, and I literally was just in awe of how the experience went. And I was in therapy, and she asked me to hug the pillow. And I'm open to this stuff, but yet I was like, this feels so weird. And what was so great about it and so beautiful is that I was able to go back. And I was able to go back to the sidewalk where my brother and I sat, and I'm getting the chills even thinking about it. We sat and we saw my dad's green van drive by, and he stopped, and I just knew. I was young. I was like maybe 8, maybe 7. Yeah, about 8 years old. And I just knew that was when my parents were getting divorced. And we live in a country where over 50% of our population gets divorced. So guess what? Get over it. No, that's justifying it. But I justified for a really long time. I had perspective for a really long time and didn't realize how much these moments affected me. And so my brother and I just sat there, and I remember my dad rolled down his window and looked at us. We were at our neighbor's house, so like 2 houses up from our home, our childhood home. And I remember him kissing us on the lips, which was very odd. Wasn't what our family did. And that was it. There was no really words exchanged. And what I remember, my brother and I just sat there crying. And there were still no words exchanged and no touch exchanged. And I was like, there was touch with the kiss, which was really endearing now that I think back. But I didn't realize that I just needed to be talked about with that situation. We were never really sat down to tell us that they were getting separated, that they were divorcing. And the impact of me not seeing my dad for a year, and this is not, his fault, my mom's fault. I kind of put it in a sense that it was just kind of the best they knew how. And I know my dad really wanted to see me, but it was a whole year I didn't see him. And I didn't realize how much that affected me. I was 8 or 9, very impressionable year. I had that father figure there. And over the years, I kind of just chalked it up. But what came up for me in that therapy session was, what does she need? She needs a hug. So what did I do? I hugged the pillow. What does she need? She needs to cry. What does she need? She needed to be loved more. What does she need? She needed words. She needed words to explain the best way they know how. And I have no remorse or ill feelings toward both my parents. They knew that's the best they knew how. That's the best they knew how with divorce. And for me to sit here still at 31 years old when I was 8 or 9 when that happened, to be like, damn them. No. Now as an adult though, how can I release that? How can I take care and be that maternal instinct for that inner child? And I thought that was so powerful when I started reading about the doll therapy, is you start to become maternal for yourself. And that's a beautiful thing when you could start to take responsibility. Because I always wonder why I yearn for certain things throughout my years of this healing. And it lied down to those kind of moments. It lied down to what you feel should have happened, but you don't know because you're young. This is your first time on life, to our knowledge, and you just do your best. And so I want to give you this release, and I share that story because it gives it context. And I never share stories to give ill intentions towards others. I just believe it's just, hey, it's my story, and you never hurt to, and it's not, and it doesn't hurt to share, because it will open up a floodgate for you, and that floodgate is beautiful. It can be beautiful. It can feel like right now a lot of tears. It can feel like right now is a lot of rejection. But what it can feel like is an overwhelming community of love that's flooding through. An everlasting feeling of acceptance that's flooding through. It can be possible for you to open up this growth for you in your mind, in your heart, in your body, in your soul. So I hope you do it today, tomorrow, and the next, because this thing called life is meant to feel. And your feelings are very valid. And no more justification. Let's release. Because the release is what we need. And then we can get to this beautiful thing called perspective, to have gratitude for life. You're breathing, you're alive. You may not feel well, but you are well. You got to the end of this podcast, and so I believe you, my friend, have the ability to create more room for more, to dream more, to feel more energized, to have that positivity and these lights that people are showing darkness, because you are powerful and you have a lot to give. Let's end it on that note, because this is never perfect. I appreciate you guys always pushing through with me. So as always, give yourself grace for yesterday, peace for today, and a plan for tomorrow.